So I went on the internet and I found this. Retardanistan back to the productivity levels of the early 1990s. What the hell's going on here, Byron?
You may recall that recently there was a train crash in Durban, whereby two trains hit each other because the signal guys fell asleep and, somebody missed the memo. And anyway, it derailed the coal trains. And now they can't send coal out the country. So apparently, coal exports in Richards Bay is now down to 1990 levels. You remember when we had sanctions? Yeah, our coal exports are equivalent to being sanctioned, thanks to the ANC.
And of course, that is not all because Eskom has collapsed. Let us just be honest with ourselves. Eskom has completely collapsed. Every time we have stage 4 currently, it's actually stage 8 or stage 10. The only reason it's stage 4 is because the private sector has their own power generation capacity that wasn't there before. But as the article does say, Eskom has a proud history. For 85 years, it produced the cheapest and best electricity in the world. In fact, in 2001, it won the best company producing electricity in the world as well. But now, it sort of hardly exists. Again, 30 years of Britanistan has basically put Eskom back to the 80s level of energy production.
Yes, unfortunately, this now appears to be an ongoing issue in Retardanistan, whereby what we actually say is that South Africa as a whole actually didn't do that bad under, apartheid. What we specifically mean is apartheid sanctions, not apartheid the system. So what they now seem to appear to be doing is going, make South Africa great again, give it the same economic environment, is equivalent to sanction South Africa. Man, it's hard to not see the parallels. I honestly think the ANC is doing it for our benefit. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if we look at other stories where there has been allegations that the ANC has been bought by Iran, that it supports Hamas, that it's doing everything in its power to sort of cancel any influence of the Western world in South Africa. So maybe the ANC is thinking to itself, you know what, maybe we should be sanctioned because then our economy will grow, just like it did in the 80s under the Nats. I mean, that's my conspiracy theory. It's the only economic policy that sort of has a bit of merit that the ANC has had over the past 30 years, but they really want to be sanctioned because that will lead to economic growth.
They fail to understand that there's certain sectors of the economy that you actually just need to maintain, like the trains and the electricity. And they haven't maintained either of them. But the actual consequences of these have been accelerated deindustrialization of South Africa. And what we're seeing is that economically it's now starting to impact us. A significant amount of South Africa's revenues generated through mineral extraction. So that's mining and obviously minerals being sent abroad. We know that South Africa already has a windfall in terms of taxes. It's not collecting enough taxes. And part of that is because the commodity booms have basically shrunk. They've gone away. You know what really doesn't help? Actually going, well, we can still export minerals, but actually we can't because we've got the trains and the roads are fogged. So how exactly are we actually going to export all of the coal that we dug up? The answer is we're not. That's going to seriously impact Treasury, is it not, Ramon? And I'm pretty sure there's a budget coming up in the next couple of weeks.
And just forget the next couple of weeks. Mozambique, right? The communist shithole known as Mozambique has opened a port that is 10 times better than the ports in South Africa. And basically it can bypass South African ports for very important exports from Mozambique itself. So essentially what we're going to have to do one day is send our raw minerals to Mozambique and then export it from Mozambique, because it would be much easier to do that than just to send it through from Richards Bay, which is right here. Now listen, Mozambique, growing up, was always rated the poorest country in the world, and it probably still is today. But if they can get it right, what on earth is the excuse for us? I just don't get it unless, Retardanistan, because that name just seems to stick. It's the only explanation that works.
No, I disagree, Ramon. I know you like it when I disagree with you because you see, I think that Mozambique has something that Argentina has, and that is it has a very long history of retarded socialist collectivist type policies. And so they know how much they fuck up the country. And so as a result, Mozambique is at least looking to its own infrastructure and thinking, you know what we really need? We've had a long time of just like real shitness. You know what we really need? Some jobs. And maybe if we just build a port and make sure it works, might get a few. Same as Argentina is now experiencing, which is why Argentina will no doubt become a new oasis of individuals. With that being said, in South Africa, we still have a relatively functioning economy. And as you know, that economy still generates a tax base, and that tax base is still able to support social grants. So, my theory on this, Ramon, is that South Africa's problem is it just hasn't experienced enough pain. Maybe once we've experienced even more pain, and the country's even worse than it is now, then perhaps the people of Retardistan will actually realize being retarded has retarded consequences.
Yeah, being retarded is not a long-term strategy, I'm afraid to say. But the ANC hasn't suffered enough for it. I don't think South Africans have suffered enough for it. And for some reason, I think there's still a disconnect between the unemployment rate and the policies of the ANC. People are just not making that inference correctly. Let's see how it goes. But I think after a while, it's going to be tough to be called Retardistan in the next 10 years. Will we want to stop that one day? Will we take things into our own hands and just have regime change and actually just do normal things that the British and the Indians and the Japanese solved 100 years ago? I hope so.